Howdy, folks. Welcome to FinOps for Finance. This month, we're joined by a very special guest. We have Victor Garcia, live from Madrid. Very happy man after Spain's relatively recent victory in the Euros. I have a very upset 10-year-old who would beg to differ, but that is sport. I came across Victor on LinkedIn. I saw his FinOps weekly newsletter. It's really, really powerful resource. So I'll just hand over to Victor to introduce himself.
Yeah. So thanks Donald for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here on the chat. So yeah, I'm Victor. I created the FinOps weekly newsletter recently. So I basically gather all the resources, news that I can find on the website about FinOps, cloud optimization, finance related stuff, also on business. So that's my recent work, and maybe as a origin story, I worked in cloud for 6 years. So I've been transitioning from like a more developer role to a more let's say cloud architect DevOps world. So when I worked in a company that no one like was doing the deployment, so I started doing that part. So I transitioned more to DevOps. Then I moved to a consultancy firm that worked as a AWS developer. So I was like all over AWS content, Lambdas, DynamoDBs, all that stuff. And then I moved to another company, which I am now. And then I learned all about the cloud and all the different architecture options, learned a lot from other people. And finally, I ran up on a case where there was a need of cloud optimization, and I was like, okay, maybe I should investigate this field a bit. And then I learned all about the FinOps part, and it's like, okay, there's a whole ecosystem here related to finance, cloud, and those are like two of the most fields that I like the most. So it's like, okay, I should investigate on that, and that's how everything started.
Very, very cool, and it's great to speak to someone from a completely different background. And I suppose the channel is aimed at people coming from a more
Yeah.
finance analytics base. So I know this is kind of off topic slightly, but I'd love to get a bit of an understanding from an engineering perspective. Like when you're speaking to engineers now, you can actually like, do you go down as far as looking at the code, or how to see the efficiencies in the code, because you can understand that? Like I could look at code and it just looks like hieroglyphics to me. But how deep do you go, and how valuable is it to have that understanding in driving some actions?
Yeah, so the good thing about that is that you can actually drive like lower level optimizations. What I mean by that is like if you are using AWS resources and you know how to configure them and how to optimize them, then you are able to actually make the reduction based on code. So you can apply the tool, you can know the tool that you are doing, so you can apply some Kubernetes stuff that reduce the cost, and then that impacts directly the cost on cloud, and therefore it impacts the efficiency that your team has in terms of the engineering. So affecting the engineering part is like you are able to actually do the initiatives that are engineering oriented. So like reduce costs in the workloads. Is like, okay, shut down a VM. I can do it with code, with the scripting, so I can automate things.
Very, very cool. And then does that make it easier to have conversations with engineers as well? Because you
Yeah.
might have, I don't know, 100 right sizing recommendations. And if you're from non-technical background, you're like, okay, there's 100 recommendations, but you can look at it and say, well, these 20 need burst capacity for whatever reason, or so I know that I'm not even going to ask the question of them. It must help a lot in terms of really finding the more valuable conversation piece and
Yeah,
where the value
and
is.
also a good thing that that this type of role has is like you can understand what the effort is in terms of the implementation side. So sometimes I talk this too with several people and more leadership, and they told me like if the effort that you're going to put is more expensive than the cost that you're going to
Yeah.
reduce in, I don't know, a year, 2 years, it doesn't make sense if it's a small amount of money. So you should leverage that. So by knowing the code, you can understand, you can say your engineers or your people like reduce the work here and do more work because it will take this cost and this is more or less what you're going to reduce. So this way you are able to understand what they can do actually,
Yeah.
and you can tell very specific orders and very specific tasks so that they implement it and they have less cognitive load. So like should I do this or that, and it's like you do this, we save, how much do we save? They get a calculation, okay, we do it. This way is easier for them and you try to save them time.
And I suppose you can empathize with them a lot more as well. You're like,
Yeah.
guys, like we're running M4s, could we switch to M6G and we'll save 20 plus percent? But you know that's a massive lift in terms of the re-architecture and the coupling that's involved, as opposed to that seems like a big job. So it's I suppose that's quite valuable as well. You know how much to hit them with, like 5 small jobs or one big thing, and that.
Yeah, and also because you know how much time does things take, because you have lived it. So like if you have to move, let's say, or you have to architect a whole scripting thing to switch, cloud storage, or maybe shut down VMs, and this will require like you need to do it in a maintenance window because it will shut down your application. But maybe if you do it in a different way, it doesn't shut down. So you know that okay, we need to reduce, but we need to reduce in a way that it's easier for the engineers and also it's makes your application available, because after all you don't have to lose your scope of like you have an application that is providing value, that is normally getting the revenue, so you need to make it as available as possible based on the constraints, and your cost reduction cannot impact the performance if it's, for example, SLA constrained, because you always have to think about these things when you are doing optimizations.
I suppose an engineer won't get shouted at if their application is 10% more expensive, but if it falls over, they will get shouted at. So
Yeah. So, for example, if you start getting P1s all the time because you shut down too much, or you are constraining your VMs to grow because you don't want to spend more than, then is it worth the effort of cost optimization, the travel that you're giving your engineers, and then you have to optimize the application again because it has to run on less resources? Is that worth it? Maybe not. So yeah, you have to think about that.
very, very cool. No, and it's only from kind of having conversation with the more technical people, and I suppose anyone looking to start off, if you are not coming from a technical point of view, the more conversation you have about this, you can kind of pick up nuggets of knowledge along the way. Very good. So, like as I mentioned at the top, kind of got connected when I started looking at your newsletter, which is great. It saves me kind of trolling the internet or my LinkedIn feed to find everything, because you put it in one kind of easy to digest slot. Um, could you tell us a bit why you kind of started with this in the first place, and what are you kind of aiming to do? What are people expect when they sign up and the information that they receive?
Yeah, so well, the first idea is like when I dive into new environments, I try to find a way that is more efficient for me to learn, and that normally takes getting resources, being able to take notes, try to understand and read a lot of things in a quick way. And I thought a newsletter was a format that I haven't tested yet, because I didn't want a website, even though now I'm building one for that, but it's kind of in the middle. But I want something that I can write, so I could, and I can gather resources. So I guess I'm good at gathering resources. The only problem that I had is processing them. So I am very good at like gather a lot of stuff. So I say, okay, maybe I curated a set of resources that I can share every week, and then do more resource sharing, all of that, expanding it and see like how it works. So FinOps Weekly, after all, is I revise everything that happens on the FinOps related sector every week, and I share it in a small article summaries, and then you can read the original article and go out and see like the whole thing if you're interested. If not, you can go to the next one, and then it's evolving to share more things. Like I got a lot of people that were searching for jobs, so what I did is like I did a small piece that gathers like important links. So FinOps Foundation org job page, if you want to check that out, or if you want to check the weekly like the LinkedIn FinOps jobs,
Yeah.
then you click there and you go there. So I am like trying to gather all the information I can related to it, and then try to ask the community like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you think it could be valuable? Is this valuable? Is this not? Try to provide all the information I can related to FinOps.
Very good. So it's kind of an evolving, and I noticed that from your first couple to your latest one, it's evolving and
Yeah.
improving over time, and it looks really slick as well. Um, I think what I really like about it is there's a mix of things in there. Like there's some technical updates, but there's also some use cases and stories where showing the practical application of FinOps by some companies. So I think especially for those kind of relatively new, it makes it a lot more real in terms of what's possible, what have people done. Because I suppose outside of a newsletter or something like that, it's you're only going to really you're going to have to go to maybe a meetup group
Mhm.
or a community event, which again are really worth doing. But a lot of people work remote now, and the thought of like getting out of sweatpants and leaving the house is kind of maybe a bit of a barrier to entry. So having everything available with these examples is really powerful thing to have. And I look forward to seeing the evolution as well. And the fact that you mentioned the job postings as well, like that's kind of a key element. It's people evolving and shifting and
Yeah.
advancing their career as well. Very
Yeah.
good. So then in terms of, I suppose with my target audience be kind of more from the non-technical side of things, kind of finance analytics, and I know you've come at FinOps from the other side. Is there any, I suppose, advice that you could give to those people who are looking to? It's a question I get most often. People are
Mhm.
like, if I do the FinOps certified practitioner exam, will this get me a job in FinOps? If I do the intro and the focus course, will this get me started? What are your thoughts in terms of what you might need to start doing and demonstrating to break into FinOps as a career?
Yeah, so as I said, I am, passionate about the finance stuff. So, I understand the finance people more or less terms, even though I am struggling with it because I, tend to do very out of analysis in terms of stocks and all that finance. I'm very used to the language. So when I saw all the language, it's like, okay, this makes sense, even though I am like not very good at it. So for finance people, what I would say is like, try to understand the language of the cloud elements. So like get used to see cloud deployment, the infrastructure. Don't get worry about it. You need to understand it to make the engineers not upset because if you understand what you are doing, even though it's a whole different thing, if you understand it on the architectural level at least, that would make you like much better FinOps professional. Even though it's not your task, it's the same on the other side. Like if an engineer understands the finance part, it's better for FinOps that if he or she does only pure engineering. So that's my recommendation. Like don't be afraid of knowing or studying cloud or maybe get some certification, especially on the architectural side. They tend to be less technical. I mean, not less technical, but less implementation oriented and more into like, okay, this component is related to this component, these systems tend to be together, all of that. So that's my advice in terms of for non-technical people. Like architectural thing is technical, but it's the less technical you could get instead of doing the scripts. So
Would
that's
that be
Mhm.
something like the cloud practitioner for AWS, like the base certification for a lot of the cloud providers where you just learn about the different services, or would it be to start with, and then would you go look to go maybe as you mature and understand a bit more, go a level below that again, or how
I
deep
would
do you go?
start with practitioner levels, and then let's see. I would maybe explore. It depends on your organization. Like if your organization is multi-cloud or only one provider, you tend to do maybe all of the practitioners if you can. Like if your company finance it, you can do them. And then you start to see connections. You tend to understand like how the products relate to each other, and you start to understand like, okay, this service is common to all three and does this. Like if you understand what the service does, you can translate to all of the three providers or four or whatever they are.
Yep.
And then you are able to make connections. And the moment that you start making connections in cloud services, then you're good to go. So maybe from practitioner, and then if, for example, your FinOps requires more technical thing, maybe you can go to architectural certifications like associate, so middle level, because they make you understand the console, maybe some commands, so it gets a little bit complex on that side for non-tech, but you get to understand more systems in general. So now
Yep.
from that information you can do actually like, okay, this piece could be costing a lot. So for example, storage.
Yep.
If you are able to know like you have archive storage, so like storage that can be retrieved with 2 days, that takes 2 days to get retrieved, but is way cheaper for auditing purposes, for storing your I don't know, information about audits, your old reports, all of that. But you need to understand.
Yep.
Then that's something you get to know, and you know you can suggest that, and maybe you don't know how to implement it, but you know it. So that's
Yep.
one you improve for that, and doesn't require a lot of technical knowledge.
Yes. So as opposed to look at your storage costs and saying S3, okay, S3 is storage, but like you say, understanding the layered storage, the glacier, and the different costs associated with that piece, that kind of makes it more. No, that makes a lot of sense. You don't need to be able to write the code or hands on keyboard, but having that level of understanding makes a more meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Cool. No, sounds great. I think that's about all I had for today, Victor. I was wondering if people want to get in touch, how can they kind of contact you, and where's best to catch up with you?
Well, so as Donald said, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you'll probably have the links on the description
Yep.
of the podcast. But yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I post that almost every day, and if you ping me there, I will reply. Also, as Donald mentioned, the weekly newsletter, so it's finopsweekly.com now. I post everything; it's going to be there. So yeah, those two ways are the best to contact me. Then of course we can set up calls and all of that, but those are the two ways you can you can find me.
Brilliant. That's great, Victor. Thanks so much for your time, and anyone listening, like it's a really good resource to just get a snapshot. So like as opposed to scrolling through your RSS feed or whatever it is, Victor's
Yeah,
already done the hard work. He's pulled all
yeah,
the relevant stuff together. So it's just in one spot, and by kind of using the newsletter, listening to a couple of podcasts, all that sort of thing will make you more familiar with the language and what's going on, which will up level you. Overall, you know what's going on, and you can have those more meaningful conversations, and it'll help get your foot in the door and start doing FinOps, which
yep.
is what we're aiming to do. So that's awesome, Victor. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
No, thanks a lot, Donald. Thanks. It's been a pleasure to be here, and hope that I could share some valuable stuff to the people listening.